In the Art of Happiness, His Holiness. The Dalai Lama and psychiatrist Dr. Howard Cutler explore one of humanity's oldest questions. What does it mean to live a truly happy life? Their answer is both ancient and strikingly modern. Happiness is not something we stumble upon. It is something we cultivate through the mind. From the very beginning, the Dalai Lama rejects the idea that happiness depends on luck, possessions, or external circumstances. Instead, he insists that it begins with mental training, the deliberate cultivation of compassion, awareness, and inner balance. Just as physical health requires exercise, emotional well-being requires discipline of thought. Our peace depends less on what happens to us, and more on how we interpret it. What makes this book powerful is its meeting of worlds, Eastern philosophy, and Western psychology. Through Cutler's conversations with the Dalai Lama, we see how Buddhist principles like compassion, detachment, and mindfulness align perfectly with modern insights into mental health and emotional resilience. The Dalai Lama speaks not as a mystic removed from life, but as a scientist of the mind, gentle, curious, and deeply human. He teaches that every human being, regardless of belief or background, seeks the same thing: to avoid suffering and to find happiness. But the path is often misunderstood. We chase pleasure, status, and approval, only to end up anxious and disconnected. True happiness, he explains, arises from a calm mind and a warm heart, from living in alignment with kindness, purpose, and wisdom. The book's message is both comforting and challenging. Happiness is not a gift. It is a responsibility. It requires self-awareness, patience, and the courage to confront your own thoughts. As the Dalai Lama reminds us, the purpose of life is to be happy, and the art lies in learning how to create that happiness from within. Section 1. The Purpose of Life: Seeking Happiness Above All. The Dalai Lama begins with a disarmingly simple statement. The purpose of life is to be happy, but his definition of happiness is far deeper than pleasure or success. It is a steady state of inner peace and emotional stability, unaffected by the ups and downs of external life. Every person, regardless of culture or religion, is united by the same longing for happiness and the wish to avoid suffering. He explains that most of our pain comes not from life itself, but from confusion, from misunderstanding what happiness truly is. We chase fleeting satisfactions, wealth, recognition, comfort, or sensory pleasure. These bring temporary joy, but leave us emptier than before. True happiness, the Dalai Lama says, cannot be found outside ourselves. It must be cultivated in the mind. Dr. Cutler, approaching the topic from a psychological lens, observes that modern society's obsession with material progress has not produced emotional well-being. Despite having more than ever, people are more anxious, lonely, and dissatisfied. The Dalai Lama agrees. Outer progress means nothing without inner development. The mind, when untamed, becomes our greatest source of misery. When trained, it becomes our greatest ally. The path to happiness begins with a shift in attitude. Instead of viewing happiness as something to acquire, we must see it as something to generate through compassion, gratitude, patience, and right understanding. The more we align our thoughts and actions with the well-being of others, the more peace we experience ourselves. He reminds us that happiness is not selfish, it is contagious. A peaceful mind radiates outward, to families, communities, and even nations. The Dalai Lama's vision is profoundly humanistic. When we nurture inner happiness, we contribute to the collective happiness of the world. Thus, the purpose of life is not to chase pleasure or escape pain, but to cultivate a mind so balanced, so open, and so compassionate that happiness naturally arises, not as a reaction, but as a way of being. Section 2. The Source of Happiness. Training the Mind. The Dalai Lama teaches that the true source of happiness lies not in external success, but in the state of our mind. Money, beauty, power, and comfort may ease life's conditions, but none can create lasting peace. Happiness is an inner discipline, a skill to be developed, not a condition to be discovered. He explains that our thoughts shape our reality. When the mind is clouded by anger, jealousy, or fear, even favorable circumstances bring discomfort. But when the mind is calm and compassionate, even hardship feels lighter. The key, then, is not to control life's events, but to train the mind to meet them with wisdom and equanimity. Dr. Cutler, as a psychiatrist, connects this ancient teaching to cognitive psychology, showing how our perception determines our emotion. Two people can face the same situation and experience it completely differently, depending on how they interpret it. This is why mental training is so powerful. By reshaping our interpretations, we reshape our emotional world. The Dalai Lama emphasizes mental hygiene as essential as physical hygiene. Just as we cleanse the body daily, we must regularly cleanse the mind of resentment, attachment, and judgment. Meditation, reflection, and compassion are his tools for this inner cleansing. Through awareness, we begin to notice how our thoughts create suffering. And through discipline, we learn to replace them with thoughts that heal. He says, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. Compassion is not just moral virtue. It is psychological medicine. It softens the ego, reduces isolation, and restores the natural harmony between ourselves and others. Ultimately, the Dalai Lama defines happiness not as a feeling, but as a state of inner balance, a peaceful coexistence between reason and emotion, self and others. When the mind is trained toward love, patience, and understanding, happiness ceases to depend on circumstance. It becomes a quiet strength, a way of living, not a moment of pleasure. Section 3. Overcoming Suffering, the Mind's Transformation. The Dalai Lama does not deny the existence of suffering. He begins by accepting it as an inescapable part of human life. But he teaches that while pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. The difference lies in how the mind responds. The goal is not to eliminate pain, but to transform our relationship with it. He explains that much of our suffering comes from resistance, the belief that life should always go our way. When reality contradicts our expectations, we experience frustration, anger, or despair. But when we learn to accept life as it is, unpredictable, imperfect, and impermanent, we free ourselves from unnecessary pain. Dr. Cutler connects this teaching to Western therapy, showing how acceptance reduces anxiety and self-blame. The Dalai Lama adds a deeper dimension. Acceptance is not passive resignation. It is mental flexibility, the wisdom to adapt without losing peace. If something can be fixed, he says, there is no need to worry. If it cannot be fixed, worrying is useless. He also distinguishes between physical pain and mental suffering. Physical pain may be unavoidable, but mental suffering, rooted in attachment, fear, and self-centered thinking, can be lessened through awareness and compassion. When we shift our focus from "why is this happening to me" to "what can I learn from this?" we transform adversity into growth. The Dalai Lama often speaks of perspective as the great healer. A broader view turns tragedy into teaching, loss into humility, and failure into wisdom. By realizing that all people suffer, that pain is the common thread of humanity, our heart opens instead of hardens. Suffering then becomes a teacher. It reveals the mind's attachments and invites us to strengthen our patience, empathy, and resilience. The Dalai Lama reminds us that a calm mind is not a mind without pain. It is a mind that no longer fears it. When suffering loses its power to disturb, happiness becomes unshakable. Section 4. The role of compassion, the heart of happiness. If there is one principle that defines the Dalai Lama's philosophy, it is compassion. He teaches that the surest path to happiness is to cultivate a genuine concern for the well-being of others. Compassion is not just moral goodness, it is a psychological truth. When we focus less on ourselves, our suffering decreases. The Dalai Lama explains that self-centeredness isolates us, creating endless comparison, fear, and dissatisfaction. But when we open our hearts, even slightly, our pain softens. Compassion connects us to something larger than the ego. It reminds us that every being seeks happiness and tries to avoid suffering, just like we do. From that recognition arises empathy, patience, and kindness, the raw materials of true joy. Dr. Cutler adds that modern research supports this ancient wisdom. Acts of kindness release neurochemicals that reduce stress and increase fulfillment. Helping others doesn't just feel good, it transforms our emotional state and even our physiology. The Dalai Lama smiles at this scientific validation and says, "Now you see, compassion is not only good, it is useful." Compassion, however, is not weakness. It requires strength, courage, and awareness. To be compassionate is to feel others' pain without being consumed by it, to help without expectation. It begins with understanding yourself and expands outward naturally. The Dalai Lama often says, "If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion." He distinguishes between pity, which creates distance, and compassion, which creates connection. Pity says, "You are different from me." Compassion says, "We are the same." This perspective dissolves fear and resentment, making room for forgiveness and understanding. The more we train in compassion, the more we realize that happiness and kindness are not separate. To live compassionately is to live wisely, because the greatest peace comes not from being served, but from serving. Ultimately, compassion transforms life into a shared journey rather than a private battle. When your happiness depends not on taking, but on giving, you discover what the Dalai Lama calls the deepest joy of all, the joy of the open heart. Section 5. The power of perspective, changing how we see the world. The Dalai Lama teaches that much of our unhappiness doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from how we interpret it. The same event can feel unbearable or manageable depending on the perspective we choose. Therefore, happiness is less about changing our circumstances and more about changing how we see them. He calls this the training of perception, learning to shift from narrow, emotional thinking to a broader, wiser view. When we zoom in on our pain, it fills the entire screen of our mind. But when we step back, we see it as one part of a much larger picture, temporary, understandable, and even useful. Dr. Cutler relates this to cognitive psychology. Our thoughts color reality, and distorted thinking leads to emotional suffering. The Dalai Lama offers an antidote: reframing. When faced with difficulty, instead of asking, "Why me?" ask, "What else could this mean?" Or, "How might this strengthen me?" Perspective turns obstacles into opportunities for growth. He often reminds us that everything depends on context. A flat tire can feel like a disaster until you remember it prevented you from being in a serious accident later. Losing a job can seem like failure until it becomes the doorway to a better path. By cultivating a flexible mind, we turn life's problems into teachers rather than enemies. Another dimension of perspective is gratitude. By focusing on what we have instead of what we lack, the mind naturally grows lighter. The Dalai Lama notes that gratitude and envy cannot coexist. When we see life as a gift, suffering loses its dominance. Perspective also means remembering impermanence, the truth that all things, good and bad, eventually pass. This awareness humbles us, softens our attachments, and helps us cherish the present moment more deeply. In the end, the Dalai Lama's lesson is simple. You cannot always change reality, but you can always change your relationship with it. A wise mind does not deny pain. It places it in its proper size. And when you learn to see clearly, peace naturally follows. Section 6. Dealing with anger and anxiety. The practice of inner calm. The Dalai Lama teaches that emotions like anger, fear, and anxiety are natural. They arise from the human instinct to protect ourselves. But when left unchecked, they become destructive, clouding judgment and poisoning peace of mind. The goal is not to suppress these emotions, but to understand and transform them. He describes anger as a spark that burns both the one who throws it and the one it touches. In the moment of rage, reason disappears, compassion collapses, and suffering multiplies. Yet anger is not pure evil. It is energy. The art lies in redirecting that energy through awareness. When you pause, breathe, and observe anger without acting on it, you weaken its control. Dr. Cutler connects this to psychology's concept of emotional regulation. Suppressing anger only buries it. Expressing it without mindfulness magnifies it. But analyzing it with calm curiosity transforms it. The Dalai Lama calls this emotional hygiene, treating negative emotions as you would an injury, not with shame or denial, but with care and understanding. He suggests 2 antidotes to anger and anxiety: compassion and patience. Compassion dissolves anger by shifting focus from self to others, seeing the person who hurt you as another human being caught in ignorance or pain. Patience, in turn, allows emotion to settle before it becomes action. When you practice patience, he says, you protect your mind more than any weapon can. Anxiety, on the other hand, often stems from attachment to outcomes, wanting life to unfold our way. The Dalai Lama encourages trust in impermanence and mindful acceptance of uncertainty. Fear loses its grip when we stop demanding control. He reminds us that peace of mind doesn't come from avoiding triggers, but from building inner stability. The calm person is not one who never feels anger, but one who recognizes it early and transforms it into understanding. The Dalai Lama summarizes this lesson with deep simplicity. Do not let the behavior of others destroy your inner peace. True strength is not reaction, it is mastery. When your peace no longer depends on circumstances, you have discovered the quiet power of the mind. Section 7. the practice of compassionate relationships, connection as a path to joy. The Dalai Lama believes that relationships are the mirror through which we discover ourselves. They are both the source of our greatest happiness and our greatest suffering because they reveal our attachments, expectations, and hidden fears. Yet, when approached with compassion and wisdom, relationships become powerful spiritual practice. He explains that genuine love is not possessive or dependent. It is rooted in respect and understanding. Most people mistake attachment for love, clinging to others in search of security or validation. But attachment breeds fear of loss, rejection, or imperfection. True love, by contrast, is expansive. It wants the other to be happy, even if it costs you comfort. Dr. Cutler observes that Western relationships often collapse under the pressure of idealized expectations. The Dalai Lama offers an antidote. Replace expectation with appreciation. Instead of demanding that others meet your needs, focus on gratitude for what they already bring to your life. Every relationship, he says, is an opportunity to practice patience, forgiveness, and generosity, the real foundations of happiness. He distinguishes between conditional love, which says, "I love you because you please me," and unconditional compassion, which says, "I wish you well because you are human." Compassionate love is less about emotion and more about intention, a quiet commitment to see others' humanity, even when they disappoint or hurt us. Conflict, too, becomes a teacher. Instead of reacting with anger, the Dalai Lama encourages curiosity. Why am I suffering? What expectation has been broken? What lesson is life offering here? In that awareness, pain softens, and empathy arises. He often reminds us that relationships are the training ground of compassion. We cannot develop patience, forgiveness, or empathy in isolation. Through others, their kindness and their flaws, we learn to open the heart. Ultimately, he teaches that happiness shared is happiness multiplied. When we cultivate love that seeks to give rather than to grasp, relationships cease to be sources of conflict and become sacred exchanges of growth. In the Dalai Lama's words, "Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive." Section 8. The meaning of life. Happiness through service and inner peace. In the final teachings of The Art of Happiness, the Dalai Lama returns to a profound truth. The meaning of life is to live with compassion and serve others. True joy is not found in self-centered pursuits, but in contributing to the happiness and relief of others. When we act with kindness, generosity, and integrity, we align with our deepest nature, and peace follows naturally. He explains that human beings are interdependent by design. Just as a single hand cannot clap alone, a person cannot thrive in isolation. Our well-being is woven into the well-being of others. By nurturing love and connection, we fulfill both our personal and collective purpose. The Dalai Lama teaches that the surest way to be happy is to make someone else happy. Dr. Cutler reflects on this from a psychological angle, noting that altruism strengthens mental health. People who serve others experience less depression, greater life satisfaction, and stronger resilience. The Dalai Lama smiles at this evidence, calling it the science of kindness, proof that compassion is not just moral, but practical. Yet, service without inner balance leads to burnout. The Dalai Lama insists that we must cultivate inner peace alongside external compassion. Meditation, mindfulness, and reflection are the roots that nourish the tree of service. You cannot give peace to others if you have none within yourself. True compassion, therefore, begins in silence, in the gentle work of calming and understanding your own mind. He concludes that happiness is not a destination, but a daily practice, a continual return to balance, awareness, and love. Suffering will come, but with the right attitude, it becomes a tool for growth. Joy will come, and with mindfulness, it becomes gratitude instead of attachment. In the Dalai Lama's words, "Our prime purpose in this life is to help others, and if you cannot help them, at least do not harm them." This simplicity captures the essence of wisdom: to live kindly, to think clearly, and to act from the heart. Ultimately, the art of happiness teaches that peace is not found in escaping life's pain, but in embracing it with compassion. When you live with awareness, patience, and love, happiness ceases to be a pursuit. It becomes who you are. Final reflection: the daily practice of happiness. In closing, the art of happiness reminds us that happiness is not a gift given by life. It is a discipline we practice every day. The Dalai Lama and Dr. Cutler weave a simple but transformative message. Peace of mind arises not from control or perfection, but from compassion, gratitude, and understanding the workings of your own mind. The Dalai Lama insists that happiness is built moment by moment, through thoughts we choose, emotions we nurture, and actions we take. It is not about escaping suffering, but about meeting it with patience and wisdom. Pain is natural, he says, but misery is self-created. The mind, trained through awareness and kindness, becomes the architect of our reality. Dr. Cutler reflects that Western psychology often looks for external cures, therapy, medication, or achievement, while the Dalai Lama's approach begins within. By changing our inner dialogue, we change our outer experience. We learn to respond, not react, to forgive, not fixate, to appreciate, not demand. The book closes on a note of gentle challenge. Happiness must be earned through effort. Just as a muscle grows through use, the mind grows through discipline. Meditation, compassion, perspective, gratitude, these are not ideas to admire, but skills to practice daily. The Dalai Lama's wisdom is disarmingly human. He laughs often, reminding us that happiness need not be solemn or grand. It can be found in a smile, in service, in patience with those who test us. The art lies not in seeking a perfect life, but in seeing perfection in the imperfect moments. He leaves us with the essence of his teaching. The key to happiness is peace of mind. Peace of mind comes from compassion. Compassion arises from understanding. In a world driven by noise and urgency, the art of happiness offers a quiet revolution, one that begins inside each of us. When we cultivate awareness, open the heart, and live with gentle intention, we discover that happiness was never something to chase. It was something to remember. Download the summary in high-quality MP3 format at MindShelf.net. For more timeless book summaries on spiritual growth, psychology, self-improvement, and the art of living wisely, subscribe to MindShelf on YouTube and keep expanding your inner library of wisdom. Grow in awareness. Live in balance. This is MindShelf.